I just mention, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Bruce McCormack. I'm on the executive committee of Irlogi. But without too much further ado, I'd like to welcome our first speaker, and we'll go down the same order as sitting in the program.
So from Leica Geoststems, we're a solution provider for hardware, software and services for measuring anything on the Earth's surface. So I think from our perspective, disruptive technology is a really interesting area. I think it's good. I think it needs to happen. If I think back to one of the presentations about innovation and when innovation becomes a norm, and actually then if you think about positioning, satellite positioning, sat-naving cars, it's in your phone. It becomes a norm that we're used to those positioning.
I'm not directly related to your area of business, however, I'm very interested in futures and future studies. I'm part of a global collective called Function Core, and we are a bunch of engineers, academic scientists, musicians that are trying to predict the next best thing and also try to figure out global world solutions. To define disruptive technology, it has come out of where a normal form of innovation is trying to find a solution to just improve on an existing market. And as a byproduct, something else emerges which has low value in that market, but somebody sees an opportunity and realises that it has potential in a whole new market and then outdoes the competition with that. So that can be anything. So yes, it is small sats. Also, we look at things like nanotechnology. We look at different signalling systems, 3D printing, and all the time we're trying to find new connections to see where we're going.
I just wanted to mention a couple of points here. One is that I really feel almost any technology is potentially disruptive, especially now as even tiny things like sensors, which may have no inbuilt security or no way of any of us really gauging whether third parties are introducing bits of technology that have where we don't quite understand what it does or how it works or what the vulnerabilities are. When all of that is accumulating into the very vast, connecting into very vast systems like the Internet of Things, where you have potentially billions of users, then you really can see how something quite small can have a vast effect. And one programmer's poor code can really have far-reaching effects through the entire system.
I've been working in a local authority for 10 years in terms of applying GIS as a GIS manager. And GIS is a disruptive technology within a local authority and has been for quite a while. But that's not a bad thing. That's a good thing. So disruptive, people tend to think of it as has negative connotations, and unfortunately a lot of people who could be or could benefit from using the technology see that, in that change is always difficult, especially in an organisation like a local authority. But we saw a talk today by John Hawkins, which won a very good award, and the basis of that is that he's automated a process that had time savings of up to 85%. It's totally freed up admin staff from that process completely. So again, we're not necessarily talking about replacing staff through automated processes, but we're doing things that we couldn't do before, and we're doing things in a better way, in a more standardized way. The other side of this is how automated and disruptive technologies will impact on my role as a GI expert. And Hugh gave a great talk on that just a last talk of the day, and he called it the visible GIS moving to the invisible GIS. And it's where, I mean, we're not anything special in related to that. All professional services are going to change massively over the next 10 or 20 years due to automation. The other thing is that data is still the key. So as data managers as well, we've got to keep producing good data and keep managing that data and making it available as best we can.
Thanks very much. I think there's an interesting set of observations coming through here. What I'd like to do is throw it open to you guys in the audience. Are there any comments or questions anybody would like to raise?
I'm just noticing that the topic of automation is being picked up in the general media, not just in the scientific, and it's being discussed as something that's going to have this massive effect on workforces, much bigger than even, say, the Industrial Revolution. And some commentators are starting to say that at this point, governments should really be planning for this and even moving towards a 4-day working week, that is the only way that we're going to prevent mass unemployment amongst the middle classes and professional classes in the future. And while I like the sound of a 4-day working week, I'm just wondering if any of the panellists have any thoughts on long term where we should be going as a society, because it is happening. It seems to be not just a trend, but something that's on the way.
You know, we might be lucky in this room in that we're only get the the start of it, but our kids are going to grow up in a completely different working environment than what we do. I mean, they say that maybe we'll have to have 2 or 3 different jobs just to fill the days. So, and that you won't have a career in a single job, and what they're saying that we'll have to do a bit of this and a bit of that and a bit of the other. And I think that came through in a few talks today as well in terms of trends. So maybe we'll need to do a bit of journalism as well as a bit of GI work. But it's a definite trend, and we need to be aware of it.
What's important is we need to be thinking about the future of what kind of jobs may emerge, but I don't necessarily think there's going to be mass unemployment, because if you look at the trajectory of introduction of new technologies, starting with the Industrial Revolution, a lot of jobs go away, but new ones are always created. And there's more employment following the Industrial Revolution than and more creation of jobs than there would have been beforehand. Artificial intelligence systems like IBM's Watson that can analyze 50,000 documents, which a human could never do, and draw and then weigh up a conclusion. And that's obviously going to eliminate some kinds of specialties, but it creates opportunities for other specialties. So I'd be actually fairly optimistic about what happens in the future.
We have to think about that. Like, technology is great and everything, but I would always say be very careful and plan it really well, because it's not a good enough reason to do something because we can. It has to be for the wider benefit of society.
This is just change. Ultimately, it is just change. And there is change happening. As you mentioned, the Industrial Revolution, I mentioned it in my presentation. We're simplifying how we're doing things. We're automating the process. And I'm a big believer that this is creating more jobs than we're losing.
The challenge for us is to have an idea of what's coming and then see how we best prepare. That's really what the challenge is. And machine learning is seriously going to affect everything.
I would like to agree with you. I'm not sure that GIS has a long-term future, but for a slightly different reason than you would say. Any of the technologies that we go back and we think about, they have started off as being new, disruptive, and after a short period of time, or relatively short period of time, they've been assimilated into mainstream technology.
I agree that it's one of those technologies that does become the norm, and then it's used by everyone, and you don't have to be the expert to be able to use it. And I think that is there's a number of industries you can talk about, and I think that is important. That it might well end up that yes, there isn't a GIS specialist in your organisation. The fact that the issue that I have perhaps is that it's time. Everyone is working and appreciating the technology at different times. There's still plenty of people out there that are doing things in a non-digital way. So it's not like everyone suddenly says, we're just going to we don't need the GIS experts anymore. We can do all that. And I think it also means that people are pushing the boundaries. Once you do something with it, and all this data that we've got, someone then pushes the boundary of it. Just like it is in one of the markets that we do a lot of business in is when people talk about BIM. So suddenly we've created jobs now that people are BIM specialists, BIM managers, BIM experts, BIM consultants. So we're generating those, and that really helps, I think, change the approach. People are pushing the boundaries. At some point, BIM is going to potentially be the norm, and we won't need the experts. Everyone will know about the digital transfer of data and how the workflow is going to work in the future.
I was interested you using the word we as a humans. Actually, I think increasingly it's machines are going to actually be taking all this stuff. And I was reading an article recently where the whole profession of programmers, code writers, is going to disappear because the machines actually write the code. You just set some target somewhere, and increasingly machines will teach other machines. There's a very, very new world coming, and I don't think any of us, no matter what our intentions are, can stop it. What I'd like to do is just in a few words pick up on one or two of the themes coming through this discussion. I think the first point I would make is, I think it's agreed fairly widely, that fundamental changes are coming into our particular GI kind of environment and sector. There's no question about that. It's just a question of time and so on. And I think those challenges are because of machines and automation that's coming through. However, there's major potential threats or challenges, privacy, security, and so on the one hand, but there's also wonderful opportunities like a one-day week. What do we do with the rest? Sorry, that was a bit funny, but there's great opportunities as well, cost-saving, time-saving, and so on and so on. So the final thought I would leave us with is there has been some discussion around, and suggestions that maybe we should be, whoever the we is, whether it's machines or others. Incidentally, I'm going to write a blog on whether machines could ever have consciousness and feel emotion. That's another blog that I've got coming. But that's another story. But so there's challenges and there's opportunities sitting there. But the big but is that I think, from my perspective, is humans must ultimately be the final arbiters and controllers. However, I have serious concerns whether we will be or whether machines will in fact be. I won't go into it now, but Stephen Hawking and others have been quite concerned about this because they're very worried that machines are going to be actually virtually controlling all elements of our lives, including what we do with geographical information. Thanks very much, everybody. Thank you to the panel.